Hey, everybody, and welcome to a deep dive that's coming to you because we know you're ready to say goodbye to renting and hello to home ownership. That's right. We're talking about buying your first home, and we're going to make this as exciting as possible. No more dry textbooks, no more real estate jargon that makes your head spin. We're taking a page from a popular podcast episode we found that tackles this very topic.
Yeah, it's a great jumping off point for sure.
They had some really solid advice, but we wanted to take it up a notch. Bring in the big guns.
That's where I come in.
Exactly. You're here to give us that expert level intel.
I deal with this every single day, so hopefully I can share some good stuff with your listeners.
Okay, so the podcast we're diving into today makes a really good point right off the bat. They say don't just look at the sticker price when you start house hunting. And I think we can all relate to that. It's so easy to get fixated on that one number.
Oh, absolutely. It's a classic beginner mistake.
Right. And they go on to say you have to factor in all the other stuff, the taxes, the insurance, your monthly mortgage payment.
It's about understanding the true cost of home ownership. And believe me, it's a lot more than just that initial asking price.
Yeah. You don't want to end up house poor.
The dreaded house poor situation.
Living in this beautiful home, but you can't afford to do anything else.
Exactly. No more takeout for you, no more weekend trips.
You're living on bread and water.
Well, maybe not that bad, but you get the point.
So the podcast actually gives this guideline of aiming for a home that's priced at 2 to 3 times your annual income. Have you heard that before?
Oh, yeah. It's a common rule of thumb that gets thrown around a lot.
But is it actually good advice, or is it kind of like a myth?
Well, it's not a bad starting point, but it's definitely not one size fits all.
Okay, so what should our listeners be considering instead when they're trying to figure out how much house they can actually afford?
Your individual financial picture matters way more than some arbitrary multiple of your income. How much debt are you carrying right now? What do your savings look like, especially that down payment fund?
So it's about more than just what you earn. It's about what you have available to spend.
Exactly.
And how does that actually play out in a practical sense?
A good rule of thumb is to aim for a mortgage payment that's no more than 30% of your gross monthly income. And when I say mortgage payment, I'm talking principal, interest, taxes, insurance, the whole shebang.
Right. PITI, as they say in the biz.
Exactly, PITI. But even that 30% rule, it's a guideline, not a commandment.
So again, it comes back to looking at your own personal situation.
You got to factor in that existing debt, your savings goals, any other big expenses you've got.
Because at the end of the day, it's not just about what you can technically afford on paper.
It's about what you're comfortable spending while still enjoying your life, you know?
Right. You don't want to be a slave to your mortgage.
Exactly.
So
Find that sweet spot where you can comfortably afford your home and still have some fun money left over.
All right. So once our listener has a solid understanding of their budget and how much house they can realistically afford, what's next?
Well, then comes the fun part, actually looking at houses.
Right. But before they start falling in love with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances.
We need to talk pre-approval.
Pre-approval. The word that strikes fear into the hearts of many a first-time home buyer.
It doesn't have to be scary, I promise.
Okay, so why is pre-approval so important?
Think of it like this. You wouldn't go car shopping without knowing your credit score, would you?
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Pre-approval is basically you going to a lender and saying, hey, I'm thinking about buying a house. How much can I borrow?
So it gives you a clear picture of where you stand financially before you even start looking at properties.
Exactly. And it shows sellers that you're serious about buying.
So it's like you're saying, I'm not just browsing Zillow for fun here.
Right. You're a serious contender with your financing in order.
Got your ducks in a row.
Exactly. Ducks in a row, ready to make a move.
Pre-approval. It's like the wingman of the home buying process.
I like that the wingman making sure you look good and are ready to seal the deal.
Okay, so armed with pre-approval, our listener is now ready to dive headfirst into the exciting world of house hunting. But before they fall head over heels for that charming fixer-upper or that sleek modern condo,
We gotta talk needs versus wants.
it's so easy to get swept away in the excitement of it all.
Oh, tell me about it.
Our source material even says it can be easy to fall for features that sound amazing at first, but might not be practical in the long run.
Happens all the time.
Like they use this example of like a dream kitchen island, versus actually having enough space for your family if you plan on growing.
Right. Gotta think about those future kids.
Exactly, or even pets or
Right.
in-laws.
Oh, yeah, the in-laws can't forget about them.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap of prioritizing those shiny object features over the things that really matter?
Well, the podcast actually mentions this idea of thinking long-term.
Okay, so let's dig into that a bit. What does that actually look like when you're in the trenches of house hunting.
So many things to think about, but neighborhood is huge.
Right, because it's not just about the house itself.
Exactly. It's about the community you're buying into.
So what should our listeners be looking for in a neighborhood?
Well, think about growth potential. Are there good schools nearby, even if you don't have kids yet, that can impact your resale value down the line?
Ah, good point.
And what about access to parks, transportation, grocery stores, all those things that impact your day-to-day life?
Right, you don't want to end up in a neighborhood where you have to drive 30 minutes just to get a gallon of milk.
Exactly. And beyond the neighborhood itself, think about your own life and how it might change.
Okay, give me an example.
Will this home accommodate a growing family, aging parents, a home office if your career takes a turn?
It's almost like you're playing chess, thinking several moves ahead.
That's a great way to put it because you're making a big investment here and you want to make sure it aligns with your long-term goals, not just your immediate wants and needs.
So let's say our listeners found a place that checks all the boxes. Needs, wants, future plans, everything looks good, offer's been accepted. Time to break out the champagne, right? Right, because we still have this whole escrow thing to navigate.
Ah, yes, escrow, the word that strikes fear into the hearts of many a first-time homebuyer.
Our source material kind of glosses over it.
Which is funny because it's a pretty crucial part of the process.
So let's demystify it a bit. What exactly is escrow, and why should our listener even care?
Okay, so in the simplest terms, escrow is like a neutral third party who holds on to all the money and documents related to the transaction until everything is finalized.
So they're like the referee, making sure everything's fair and square.
Exactly. They make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And this is also when things like the home inspection, the appraisal, and final loan approval all happen.
The source material makes a really good point about the home inspection. They say it's crucial, and I'm inclined to agree.
Oh, absolutely non-negotiable.
But why? Why is it so important?
Because it's basically like a physical exam for the house. This is your chance to uncover any hidden issues that might not have been obvious during your walkthroughs.
So what kind of things are we talking about here?
Everything from structural problems to outdated electrical systems to leaky roofs, you name it.
And I'm assuming this is where having a really good inspector comes in handy.
Oh, absolutely. You want someone who's experienced, thorough, and knows what to look for.
Because this is not the time to skimp and hire your buddy who took a weekend course on home inspection.
Right. This is a big investment you're making, so you want to make sure it's a sound one.
So let's say the inspector finds something during the inspection. What happens then?
Well, that's when you have some options. You can try to negotiate with the seller to have the repairs made before closing.
Or if it's something really major, you could potentially even walk away from the deal.
Exactly. You have that leverage and that protection, which is huge.
So it's about knowing your options and making informed decisions.
Precisely. And speaking of informed decisions, our source material also mentions the appraisal.
Right. So what exactly is that?
So an appraisal is basically where an independent professional assesses the fair market value of the home.
So it's kind of like a reality check.
Exactly. They're making sure that the agreed upon price aligns with what the house is actually worth.
And I'm assuming this is important for both the buyer and the lender.
Absolutely. The buyer wants to make sure they're not overpaying, and the lender wants to make sure they're not loaning out more money than the property is worth.
So it's all about mitigating risk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Risk mitigation at its finest.
Okay, so assuming the inspection and appraisal go smoothly, all the paperwork is in order, what's the final hurdle before our listener can officially call themselves a homeowner?
The closing.
The moment we've all been waiting for.
This is where you sign all the final documents, finalize your loan, and finally receive the keys to your new home.
It's like the grand finale.
Exactly, the culmination of all your hard work and dedication.
From pre-approval to closing, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. We've talked about building a realistic budget, thinking long-term about your needs and wants, navigating the pre-approval process, and understanding the ins and outs of escrow.
Our listener is now well-equipped to confidently navigate the technical aspects of buying a home, but there's another layer to this whole home buying thing, isn't there?
You're absolutely right. We've been laser focused on the logistics and the finances.
Which are super important, don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, crucial.
But there's this whole other side of it that I think sometimes gets lost in the shuffle.
The emotional aspect.
Exactly.
It's huge.
Because buying a home, it's a big deal.
It's not just a transaction.
Right. It's not like buying a car or a new pair of shoes.
It's a commitment.
So how do we prepare for that emotional shift? Because it's a real thing, right?
It is, and I think it starts with introspection.
Okay, I like that.
Before you even start looking at houses,
Yeah.
take some time to really think about what home means to you.
What does home look like, feel like?
Exactly. What kind of environment brings you peace? How do you envision yourself living in and caring for this space? Because it's going to be yours.
That's a really good point. And it's not just about the day-to-day living either, right?
Right.
It's about the unexpected stuff that comes up.
The leaky faucet.
Right, or the crazy neighbor, or the water heater that decides to explode in the middle of winter.
Exactly. And are you prepared to handle those things? Because as a homeowner, you don't have a landlord to call anymore.
Right, you're the landlord,
You are.
which can be empowering,
It care.
but also a little daunting.
Absolutely. So it's about finding that balance,
Right.
being excited about the possibilities, but also realistic about the responsibilities.
And I think that's a great note to end on
I agree.
to our listeners out there. As you embark on this exciting journey of buying your first home, remember to take a deep breath, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
There are resources out there, people who have been there, done that.
Your real estate agent, your lender, that friend who just bought a house and is now an expert,
Right.
don't be afraid to tap into that network of support. And remember, buying a home, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Enjoy the journey.
Exactly.
It's a big one.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Deep Dive today.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned a lot and feel empowered to go out there and make those homeownership dreams a reality. We'll catch you next time on the Deep Dive.